Why does there seem to be such a deep sense of frustration among voters in this political campaign? Governor Florio?
Well, government doesn't seem to be working for a lot of people, and therefore they're frustrated that their lives are affected adversely by that. I mean, I've had people talk to me, someone coming up and saying, I'm working as hard as I can, my wife is working as well, and we still can't make it. What's going on? And then they turn to government as not performing, and that justifies some of the alienation that you're seeing as well.
Do you think that people just feel that the American dream is not achievable for them?
We might be the first generation that cannot say to our children, we're leaving you better off and the world better off than the way we found it. Because the gap between the rich, the very rich, and the poor is growing. The middle income people are struggling to keep in that position. And government hasn't been working. Also, people are hungry for leadership. They don't feel there's been any really strong leadership coming out of Washington. And that frustrates them, which again is why they gravitate to some of the most outlandish, in my opinion anyway, language that we hear, most outrageous language, because at least somebody's saying something definitive. I am going to do this. These are the people we need to blame. This is what we need to do. Whether they think it can be accomplished or not, at least somebody's taking a very definitive position.
Has this primary, do you think, Governor Florio, just changed everything in the sense that people have that candidates really aren't interested in their issues, their concerns? They're only interested in themselves.
I think leadership is the point that we should be making, because times are changing very rapidly. I mean, the changes we're facing are not only coming rapidly, but they're very complex. And therefore, we have to have someone out there trying to explain the forces at work so as to be able to cope with those forces. No one seems to be doing that.
Has super PAC money influenced this campaign, do you think, more than any other that you've seen? And if so, how?
Oh, I think definitely, because super PACs are now finding their way through all of the regulations and the laws, and they basically none that are controlling them. And they have developed into very finite and very focused special interests. They have one or two things that they care about, and they force the candidates, they put a lot of pressure on candidates to assume those positions. Otherwise, they say, we're going to send our money elsewhere. We're going to fund a challenge to you in a primary. We're going to put up ads that are going to go after you. Even though they're not supposed to coordinate, they clearly, there's a wink and a nod, unfortunately.
Remind us, Governor Florio, about the U.S. Supreme Court and the decision on super PAC money and how you think that's impacted this race and people's frustration.
Well, it revolves around the thought that freedom of speech entails money. And again, there's obviously a big philosophic difference between the two sides. But by a 5-4 decision, they made the decision that the ability to spend money is really speech. And therefore, you can't limit the ability to regulate that.
On a state level, you both ran for office under a different kind of system. You accepted matching funds, public money, during your campaigns for governor. Was that a better system, do you think, Governor Whitman?
I think it was definitely. It put a cap on how much you could raise and spend, and it gave the public more of a confidence that they knew where the money was coming from, and therefore, if they thought you were being bought, they knew who was buying you, and it was them.
A better system, Governor Florio, and did more people come out to vote as a result, do you think?
I think it was a better system, and largely because in addition to the difficulties of raising money, the time consumed by raising money is a problem in this day and age.
How can we engage people more?
We've got to get people to understand the depths of the problems. I mean, we don't understand because the problems are complex and no one's willing to go out and sort of play the educator role as a public servant, to be able to explain what the options are and give people the alternatives.
Why not, do you think?
Well, because it's easier to just go along. Every time you become a leader and express what the options are, that means you have to make a choice. People don't want to make a choice, and there's where the relationship with money comes to pass. People don't want to make a choice. When you make a choice, you alienate somebody, and therefore you can't go to them for money.
Has it really become that selfish?
Right now, what's happening is any person in office who tries to reach across the aisle hears from the extremists who say, we're going to get you for that. You're not allowed to do that. We are so partisan. They don't look over their shoulder and see the other people who I believe are the majority of the public saying, Right, that's what we want you to do, solve problems. And that does take reaching, not compromise, we can't use that word, but at least consensus with the other side.
Governor Florio, Governor Whitman, thank you very much for sharing your insights. It's been very interesting.